What's up, everybody? I'm Brett L. Pape. That's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, after a few months and after a little negotiations with a couple different companies, we're back, baby. We're back. Welcome back, Coach.
Man, I cannot tell you how excited I am to jump back in the saddle with you, bro. I couldn't imagine doing it with anybody else. And huge shout out to the guys over at the Cut, for giving us an opportunity with our very first podcast last year. And absolutely love those guys and everything they're doing with Debbie Royale. We had an opportunity after taking a long break to entertain some other opportunities, and the guys over at Yards Per have been absolutely phenomenal. You guys know they help out with Project 32 a ton. So it feels like I'm at home with these guys and absolutely love what we're doing, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, what I really like about what they have done for us is they've just given us the freedom to come on and do whatever we want, whenever we want. Not that that was. It's just a sense of security knowing that we're good whenever we want to talk football. So let's kind of talk about what we're going to be doing now for this second season. Last year, typically we went on, was it Tuesday nights or Wednesdays? I think it was Wednesdays.
Wednesday nights. Yeah.
Wednesdays nights. So here we are again on a Wednesday night, but that may not be always the case. But we will always have a show at least Monday through Thursday. And then typically we're going to have a show every Sunday morning. Why don't you talk a little bit about the show on Sunday mornings? But we are going to skip this Sunday because obviously there's a huge event going on in my life. One of my daughters is getting married. It's taking place pretty much in my backyard. We're going to have over 150 people, so it's going to be pretty lock and loaded, and I won't be doing much of anything other than wedding and trying to get them all the hell out of here by Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Hey, when you got 11 kids, man, right? I mean, that's where it goes. For those of you that don't know, Coach has got 11 kids, so don't let Brett fool you when he talks about. He just says kids, like it's not 2 or 3 like most of us have. It's the entire offensive side of the football. So there you go.
It is. I'm very blessed. So yes.
Yeah. No. Happy for you this weekend. It gives me a chance. So just so you, anybody that watches this on the Sunday morning show, we're going to talk about. Answer any start and sit questions you have. We're going to talk about matchups that week. We like to take a deep dive as former coaches and talk about schemes and matchups and what teams are doing and how that can help you pick the best lineup for your fantasy team. So we're looking forward to that Sunday morning show. Again, not this weekend, but the following weekend we will dial on that in.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Sunday show. It's going to be a whole different thing for us, and we're going to, like you talk about rapid fire. Whether or not we get a lot of questions is not going to stop us from kind of getting into the big questions. Like if you're sitting in a situation, or if I'm sitting in a situation in Scott Fishbowl and I'm like, bang, I got 5 minutes. Look, what do you think about this, Coach? We'll just bounce stuff off each other, talk football, and just can't wait. And I can't believe it's here. It seems like every year the off season, let's be real, there is no off season in the NFL. They just change the name. Sometimes it's draft season, sometimes it's free agent season, and then from there it goes on to camp season. But now we're really into the real season. It's tomorrow night, Channel 4 out here on the West Coast, but out there wherever it's going to be on NBC, and that's going to be one hell of a way to kick it off with the Super Bowl champs, Los Angeles Rams, and most people's favorite, the Buffalo Bills. So it's going to be great. Here we go. We're getting right back into it, Coach.
We're ready to go. I think we're fired up. We've been itching to get back on the mic. And, again, shout out to Yards Per and the Cut Network for giving us a start in the industry. And let's get at it, man. Let's have some fun with it.
Let's do it. I don't know if you saw, I don't tweet that much anymore. I don't tweet like I used to. And most people are probably thankful that I don't. But with that being said, I did have a tweet today because I know you and I are both in the Scott Fishbowl. And today was the first day in which you can pick up a free agent and or a waiver wire edition. And I put in a waiver wire edition last week, actually. And so I was just kind of waiting, and I see that I got him, and I was so excited. And then I looked at the name. I picked up a guy named Ben Mason, who is a free agent and isn't even in the NFL. When I tried to pick up Jordan Mason, running back of the San Francisco 49ers. So
Classic.
That's how my Scott Fishbowl season is going. So did you put any waiver claims in, Coach?
I did not. It's my second year in Scott Fishbowl. I'm confident in my lineup. I felt really good going into the draft. When I walked away from the draft, I'm like, hey, there's some things that are going to have to play out. And, the only guy that on my roster that I would even consider dropping right now would be Will Fuller, simply because we don't know what his situation is. There's a lot of teams out there that could use a wide receiver. Somehow the guy's still not signed, but there wasn't anybody on the waiver wire that I was excited about to say, hey, and sure, I could spend $0 and try to get somebody, but there wasn't anybody left that I felt like I wanted to replace Will Fuller with, and so I didn't play it. I'm going to keep my money as long as I possibly can this
There you
season, and
go. There you
I feel
go.
like my roster is deep enough that I can play that game and not rely on the preseason hype or a lot of things that other people are relying on. Like Romeo Dubs, wasn't drafted, but I'm sure somebody picked him up and probably spent a significant amount of fab on it. I just don't buy the preseason hype yet based on what I think the Packers are going to be offensively this year and where he fits in that scheme, in terms of year round, especially later in the year. So I didn't, I didn't do anything on the waiver wire.
Well, let's see. You're talking about how deep you are and how you don't need to pick anybody up. So let's dive into each other's lineup
Easy.
real quick. I mean that's what I heard, and I think that's pretty much what you conveyed there. But with
Yeah.
that being said, let's look at our starters for this week. I only have one choice left to make, and I'll make it Sunday morning. But with that being said, who are your starting quarterbacks going into week one? And if you don't know, this is a super flex. So we are starting two quarterbacks. So who you start at quarterback this week? And your
So
first
I've
week.
got I've got Lamar Jackson. I picked up the 1.9. I thought it was an absolute steal in Scott Fishbowl based on quarterback scoring. And then I picked up Matthew Stafford on the turn at the 2.04. I'm very happy with both of those picks. I think Matthew Stafford's going to have a great year. I don't love his matchup in week one against Buffalo. I think Buffalo's got a very, very, very good roster. There's been a little bit of issues with the elbow. I think he's going to be fine. They've given him the rest and treatment that he needs. So and my third quarterback is Justin Fields. And against San Francisco in week one, without knowing what that offense is truly going to look like yet, I know what I think it's going to look like, but I felt like the safer pick was I couldn't sit either one of those guys for Justin Fields, obviously. So those are my two starting quarterbacks this week. How about you?
Well, I had the 107, and at the 107, first and foremost, your pick of Lamar Jackson at the 109, that is incredible value. I love that pick. I kind of went a little different. The second round, I didn't go back to quarterback, but my first pick was Kyler Murray. I got him at the 107. I was pretty excited about that. I feel like he's the fourth. He'd be my quarterback for this year.
Yeah.
And I paired him with Trey Lance. I kind of wanted to take a upside pick and felt like he can be a lot of boost, a big boom for me. And I feel like he can really provide a lot of excitement. So we'll see what happens with that. What I like about your guys, I like you got stability. You got guys that they're going to be in there for 17 games. And I don't know that with my guys, but I certainly like my guys' upside just as much as yours. Running backs. Let's see what you got going on at the running back spot.
So running back, you can start. I don't even know how many running backs can you start. I don't even remember. You can start up to 6 running backs. Yeah. So I went Devin Singletary and Ramondre Stevenson. When you understand the entire roster build that I have, I ended up going 0 running back just based off what I felt was available at the wide receiver position. And of course, Scott Fishbowl, it's heavy on tight end premium and quarterback scoring. I did not spend a lot of time on the running back position. I drafted a lot of handcuffs. It's the most injured position in football. I think if you look at last year, there was 73 games missed between some elite running backs last year. I shouldn't say elite, but some good running backs, RB1s, I think is how I defined it in the research that I was doing. But so, yeah, I feel good about those two. I think Ramondre Stevenson's the guy in New England this year, as good as Damian Harris as year as he had last year. I think Ramondre is the future of that running back room. And Devin Singletary came on strong toward the end of last year. James Cook is obviously a rookie this year. Didn't get a lot of volume at University of Georgia, splitting time with over there. So I like that pick, and I like the play. I don't love him, but considering where the rest of my roster is at, it's the best options I've got at the running back position right now. So that's what I'm rolling with in week one.
There you go. There you go. I didn't fade running backs as far as you did. I selected 2 in the 4th. I selected 1 in the 4th and 1 in the 5th. 4th round, I got Nick Chubb, and with the uncertainty of the quarterback situation, well, I guess we're certain what's going to happen, and that's going to be no Deshaun Watson in the unfortunate bowl or in the unfortunate. Excuse me, what is it, like 12 games? He's got 12, right?
He's got 11 games, and ironically, he comes back in week 13 after the bye week against the Houston Texans.
Yes.
How funny. How ironic, right?
Yeah. So I just feel like Nick Chubb's obviously going to be the part of the offense. And, I in the 4th round, I couldn't pass. 5th round, I came right back and I got Breece Hall. I'm a little concerned about early season production just because, there's a lot of talk that Michael Carter is going to be the starter early on. And you kind of saw a lot of that with, you kind of struggled with Jonathan Taylor early on in the year, and then he blew up at the end. And I'm starting a third running back, and that's Kenneth Gainwell. You talk about a situation where Miles Sanders has been banged up. I feel like he's got great PPR potential. I would be happy with 8 to 10 carries and 4 to 6 receptions. I think that would be something I would be pleased with.
No, I like it. You did a much better job in your running back room than I did. That's for sure. So
yeah, well, there's a spot where you killed, and I can't wait until we get to your tight ends. But before we do, why don't you tell us who your receivers are?
So here's where I've got a little bit of a conundrum, so to speak, based on the scoring, because I could start a third running back. I think Cam Akers, it is what it is, but I've got Darrell Henderson, I've got Naheem Hines, Madison, who I thought was going to be good. He's had RB1 production. If Dalvin Cook goes down, they seem to be leaning more towards Chandler there. So we'll see how that plays out. And I got Tyrion Davis-Price. So there is a chance I'll start a third running back. I'm still kind of contemplating that. But the wide receiver position, so I've got Chris Godwin, and I don't trust starting him in week 1, coming off the injury. I feel like it's too soon for him to be. If anything, he's probably a decoy. So I didn't put him in. I went with T. Higgins. We talked about him as part of our guys earlier. I think he's going to have a monster year this year. I took Darnell Mooney, who I think is going to be a target hog in Chicago. I took Allen Robinson, who I think, again, Matt Nagy effect. I give him a mulligan for what he did last year with the Bears. I think he's going to be great this year offensively with the Rams. And I took McCole Hardman. So the decision I have is, do you play McCole Hardman healthy over Chris Godwin coming back from the injury in week 1? Or do you play a Darrell Henderson or Naheem Hines, depending on what your thought process is with Cam Akers in week 1? So that's the decision I've got to make: is McCole Hardman or one of those running backs? And technically, those running backs are projected to outscore Hardman. And I do have Hardman in my projections, so I should probably trust my projections. I've got him as the wide receiver 4 in Kansas City.
Gotcha. That would be a tough one for me to have to look at in the starting lineup. And I'll be honest with you, I look at McCole Hardman, and I get sick to my stomach mostly because I was a McCole Hardman truther. And I wouldn't say I got burned, because I feel like, well, it doesn't matter. I don't think I got burned, but the fact of the matter is that I thought I got great value when I picked him up in the past, and it never really materialized. So anytime I see him, it just
he's to take the top off the defense guy in this offense. And so there's some opportunities there to hit some home runs, because he becomes the speed guy that Tyreek Hill was. And there's no comparison with Tyreek Hill does to McCole Hardman for sure. So let's not get it twisted, but there's a defined role for McCole Hardman if he can crack that. I think Sky Moore takes a little bit of time. Kelsey working underneath on the corner routes, and we know what we get with the rest of that receiving core. So I feel like there's an opportunity for him for sure.
Absolutely. Let's move on. Is that all yours then?
That's mine. Those are my receivers.
Okay, I got Rashad Bateman, who's I feel like the wide receiver 1 now for Baltimore. I'm pretty high on him. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. Marquise Brown, I really like his situation in Arizona. So he's got the Jets. Obviously, everyone's high on this guy. That's Justin Jefferson. That's kind of where we went different. I didn't take the second quarterback in the second round. I went with Jefferson. And then I got Elijah Moore. And I got Elijah Moore like in round 8 or 9. I was really happy to get him there. And the only decision I have is I can either start a wide receiver or a running back in this spot. And that's, am I going to play Drake London or am I going to play Khalil Herbert? I'm probably leading Drake, but I want to hear more about the knee. You got 3 more spots to go, or 3 more players to go. I have 1. So why don't we get into the strength of your team without a doubt? And it's such a great strength to have in the Scott Fish Bowl because of the fact of their scoring system and that you can just play as many of those guys as you want. So who are your 2 tight ends?
Yeah, so in the Scott Fish Bowl, it's a 3rd round reversal, right? So I had the 9th pick because I wanted to make sure I was at the top of that 3rd round reversal. So I took my 2 quarterbacks in the 1st and 2nd, and then I came back to the 3rd round. I got Kyle Pitts in the 3rd. If you look back at Marcus Mariota, what he does with tight end position and his time with Tennessee, Delanie Walker and those guys, I like the pick there. I think he's going to be a target hog this year. I think you're going to see some touchdown upside. And then I took George Kittle, who everybody knows, as long as he is healthy, he's a yak monster at the tight end position. I just wish he wasn't so unbelievably good in the run game. as,
Right.
as an inline blocker. But I think George Kittle has a monster year this year if he can stay healthy. So those are the two guys I'm starting at the tight end position, which obviously I feel really good about with Scott Fish scoring.
Yeah, your tight ends are just they're the reason why your running backs are the way they are. And
Correct.
you got to feel that makes you feel a little bit better about it. You know what I mean? Because you spent capital in other places and you spent it at a great place. Mine, I didn't, and that's mostly because when my picks were up, the guy that I would pick in that round just wasn't there, and I wasn't going to reach. And I got Cole Kmet in the ninth round,
Who I love.
I like him too. I'll be talking about him a little bit, but he's a guy that I think, where I got him, I feel pretty good. I feel like his upside, there's potential there, and I love his ceiling, and I think, I think he'll be okay. So there you go. That's our Scott Fishbowl, and obviously we'll keep track of it. I can't wait. I need bragging rights, and so we're gonna have a little friendly wager on this at the end of the year. Some way we'll pay off the other person for having not as good of a team. All right, we're at the time where we wanted to kind of talk about the coach approach guys. These are guys that, for whatever reason, we each like, whether it be dynasty or season long, or whether it just simply because you just love the player. And that's got to be pretty much a part of fantasy football too. And, I'm such a value guy, but you got to be comfortable and you got to like the guys that you have on your team. So let's start off with our guys. And at quarterback, why don't you go first? Who's your quarterback that you are just ready to say, come here, you're my guy?
So for those of you that haven't noticed yet, I'm a big diehard Cowboys fan, right? Which is why I felt like the first episode of this season I needed to bring some Cowboy love to the screen. But the reality is, this is Jalen Hurts' season. I mean, what Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni and those guys have done with that roster over the last couple of years through the draft, and it has been outstanding. I think that's a franchise that's building for the future. I think they've got their franchise guy in Jalen Hurts as he enters year 3. You add A.J. Brown to the mix, to Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You've got the three-headed monster in the backfield with Sanders and Gainwell and Boston Scott, who still serves a purpose in the passing game. The Eagles ranked second last year in screen passes, and then you add a guy like an A.J. Brown, who's an absolute yak monster, to that offense. It simplifies the throws for Jalen Hurts and what they want to do offensively. They have they have a top 5, I think the best offensive line in football. I don't think there's a better duo at the tackle position than Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. So, and then what they're doing in the interior with Lance Dickerson and Jason Kelsey. So I'm extremely excited about what this team can do. As a Cowboys fan, I hate it. I think the Eagles win that division. I think the first 7 games between Dallas and the Eagles, where Dallas has an extremely difficult schedule, starting out with Tampa Bay and Cincinnati in the first 2 games, where the Eagles have a much lighter schedule earlier in the season. That division could be over in the first 7, 8, 9 games of the season. And I think Jalen Hurts is the guy that spearheads that. He threw for 3,100 yards and had 800 yards rushing with 10 touchdowns in 15 games last season. That's without an A.J. Brown. That's with Lane Johnson missing some time at the tackle position. I just think it's everything is lining up. It's a perfect storm if you're an Eagles fan, as much as I hate to say it. I think it's the Eagles' year. I think Jalen Hurts is the guy that drives that bus.
I love that pick, and a lot of people love that pick, by the way, and it's especially in the fantasy football community because he has such an incredible ability to run the ball, and that just gives you. I mean, it doesn't matter if he overthrows a guy when 15 plays later he's running for a 40-yard touchdown, or he's always extending plays, and he's just someone that he's a big reason why I picked my guy, and that's because I feel like the commodity code is real. I feel like you need to have that. At the quarterback spot, you need to have someone who's going to give you something in the run game. So that's why I went with Trey Lance, which is most people. I mean, everywhere you see him on Twitter, it's everyone's guy. He's got all the tangibles. He's got all the things that you want. He's got the strong arm. They talk about his accuracy not being great right now. And I get it, but I feel like you're talking about a kid that got very little experience in college and played 2 games. He started 2 games last year. And when he did start, he threw 41. He completed 41 passes for 70 of 71. Completed 603 yards. Had 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The guy just went in and he played well, and he extended plays, and he gave you what you were looking for in the run game as well. So I just feel like, and I'm all in. I traded a 23 first rounder in a 1 quarterback league, which I never like giving up first rounders for a quarterback, but I did it for Trey Lance, and I'm really excited about his
No, and
prospects
hey,
in football this year, especially.
I think he fits what San Francisco wants to do offensively. I think it's a team that we know loves the outside zone, and uses that to stretch defenses horizontal to create bubbles of space. We call it in the passing game
Right.
for guys to create yards after the catch. And you've got one of the best guys in Deebo Samuel. You've got Brandon Ayuk, and you've got George Kittle, who combined, between the three of them for over 2,000 yak yards last year. So I think it sets up well. You get the ball out of his hands. You can make some easy throws. You can throw some screens. You can throw some RPO stuff. You can throw some glance routes, which is a 5-step slant off of play action. I think it sets up a lot of what these guys can do offensively. I think Trey Lance is a guy. I don't buy into the look. There's people that say, hey, Jimmy G's back. He's looking over his shoulder again. Like forget it. Like, stop the nonsense. He's practicing on another field. They're doing everything they could to trade the guy. He's not even getting the second team or third team reps. They couldn't get a deal done. Some of that I think had to do with the surgery. It's just a security blanket. If Trey Lance goes down, and Jimmy G's a guy that's more than capable of coming in, but we also know what Jimmy G does in clutch moments. He tends to throw picks in the fourth quarter when they need it the most. So he's a great. I just don't see there's any path whatsoever that Jimmy G is a threat to Trey Lance getting playing time. They're going to work through it. If he struggles, they're going to work through that. And I think Trey Lance is going to have a great career, and I'm looking forward to seeing him this year for sure.
Yeah, he's going to be a lot of, and
Love the
I
pick.
I got to echo what you said. And the reality of it is, when you look at what they gave up to get Trey Lance, you're not gonna. I mean,
That's the other part. Absolutely.
You can't justify doing all that and turning the keys back over to Jimmy G because Trey struggles throwing the ball in week 3. So we're on the same boat.
This reminds me of Jamar Chase struggles to catch NFL football last offseason. That's what this is with Trey Lance struggling with accuracy. He'll be fine when the season starts.
See, the problem with us having so much access to everything now is that everything makes news. And when you have 24-hour news cycles, you got to come up with other stuff. And I know why I'm saying that, it's all fabricated. But I don't think that there's anything to worry about. If you manage a team and you have Trey Lance, you don't have to worry about Jimmy G coming in and taking the
Agree.
job. Let's move on to running back spot. I love your pick. You're going to be talking about him a lot tonight. So why don't you kick it off and tell us about your guy?
Yeah, so I've got A.J. Dillon. It's another guy coming to year 3. I think when you look offensively, who the Green Bay Packers are, what Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers want to do with this offense, I don't trust the receiving core. I don't think Aaron Rodgers trusts the receiving core. You can look at his career and what he's done with rookie wide receivers. He doesn't tend to target them a whole lot. I think you're going to see a lot of 21 personnel. Dillon ran for 800 yards last year and caught 34 passes. Coming out of an offense at Boston College, he didn't throw the football a whole lot. The running back, so he's proven he can look natural doing that. But Aaron Jones is that guy that's going to be, used in the receiving game, I think, quite a bit. A.J. Dillon over the last 2 years has the 5th highest grade by Pro Football Focus, a PFF grade of 90.1. He's extremely efficient when he gets the ball. He's going to continue to see more volume this year. Again, the top 5 offensive line, I think, with Bakhtiari getting healthy and coming back, and what they're going to do offensively there. I love what they can do with 21 personnel in that offense, and Aaron Rodgers saying, hey, we're going to pound you. I'm going to throw some RPOs. I'm going to send Aaron Jones in motion with 2 backs in the backfield. I'm going to use him against a backer or a safety or a nickel corner. I like the matchups there. And then as Christian Watson gets healthy, Romeo Doubs continues doing what he's doing, the savvy veteran and Randall Cobb, I think that we're going to see some really exciting things out of the Green Bay Packers offensively. And that all points to A.J. Dillon, in terms of the rushing attack. No doubt he goes over 1,000 yards. I think he could see 10+ touchdowns this year.
I kind of agree. And I think all you got to do is look at the past and see that's what we're going to see. And that's because with 800 yards rushing last year, I mean, they're just only going to expand on that. They're just going to add to it. Cameron, I got Justin Fields with the upset. Well, I'll tell you what, that would be a huge upset, but I love the take. I know as someone who is pretty high in the San Francisco 49ers, I would be a little bit surprised and disappointed. But, man, certainly appreciate the take, Cameron.
But, hey, we are high on Fields, Cameron, so I like the take.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about him a lot. Breece Hall, he's my guy. And, for me, what I really liked about him is he always the metrics guys always seem to talk about, breakout age. They talk about, are you able to contribute right out
Athletic
of
profile. Yeah.
correct, right off the bat. And he was a guy that did, in 3 years, he's an early inch, which everyone loves as well. And in the 3 years he was at Iowa State, he had 718 carries for 3,941 yards, 50 touchdowns. But here's what I really like about him. He also had 82 receptions for 754 yards. In today's NFL game, we need guys who can run and catch the ball out of the backfield. If it's going to be someone that you can consider an RB1. I think Brees has not only all the metrics that we talk about, but he has the college production, and I can't wait to see him play.
Yeah, I'm excited for Brees Hall too, and I think there's a lot that people read into. Hey, Michael Carter's getting first team reps. He's probably going to start in week 1. And look, that's a guy that shows up every day, that has tremendous work ethic. They're rewarding that. I think the reality is, as the season wears on, you're going to see a lot of Brees Hall early and often. I think the talent overcomes, that situation. So I love the Brees Hall pick, and I think people are getting a little bit scared by, where he's at. But look at the athletic profile, look at the tape. I'm an Iowa State fan. I love what they do offensively there in terms of the run game. I watch as many of those games as I can, and he's another running back coming out of Iowa State that I think is going to be extremely productive at the NFL level.
We ready to talk about receivers? Because I really like your receiver. Why don't you tell them about it?
Yeah, so I went back and forth on this one, and because there's so many guys, and I try to, when you talk about my guys, stay away from the chalk and stay away from what everybody else is doing. But the reality is, there's certain guys at positions, right? So if I want to talk about tight ends, I'm going to go to Coop Fiasco. He's one of the great follows. He does all the research on the tight end position. When it comes to wide receiver position, I love what Matt Harmon does, reception perception. I also am a big believer in Sam Wallace, who every single year just seems to get it right with who his guys are at the receiver position. Having been a wide receiver myself at the college level and coached the position for a long time, I'm a huge advocate of T. Higgins. I think what he can do in this offense this year is outstanding. He had a higher target rate per route run than Jamar Chase, and a higher target share in games they both played. They were healthy. In other words, they didn't come into the game as a questionable tag. They were both healthy going into that game. He finished 13th in PPR points per game last season with Jamar Chase. And then after his return from shoulder surgery, he missed a couple of games early in the season. So if you look at after week 5, I think they were ranked in the low 20s in the first 5 weeks in terms of passing downs or passing game on neutral game scripts, which is when the game is within 7 points one way or the other. So either up by 7, you're down by 7, or somewhere within that ballpark. After week 5, they ranked 8th in neutral game passing, because they're going to use Jamar Chase. They're going to use a T. Higgins. They're going to use Tyler Boyd. They're going to use C.J. Uzomah. So I think T. Higgins is set up really, really well in that offense. And I think you're going to see Joe Burrow, who threw the ball 520 times through, I think, 16 games last year. They're going to be over 600 pass attempts, I think, this year. I think if you're going to compete in the AFC and you want to get ready for playoff football in the AFC, you've got to be really good at throwing the football and understanding coverages and getting your guys on the same page with the quarterback. And I think T. Higgins plays a big role there. And I think you see some touchdown upside too. I think he's a 10-plus touchdown guy this year.
I love it. I think he's just someone that has always produced. And when he came out of Clemson, I can remember all his national championship games. That guy was just all over the field. When he came out of Clemson, he came out, did the same thing right off the bat. He's talk about a talented offense. I think Cincinnati's going to be fun to watch for years. My guy, our last two guys for me are our last two positions, wide receiver and tight end. I kind of went with two guys that didn't have, incredible seasons last year, but I think they have a combination of a great opportunity with the lack of other target share guys in there. I mean, neither one of them have a real dominant guy at the receiver tight end spot. And that's, I got Cole Kmet at tight end, and then the receiver was Rashad Bateman. Sorry about that. I'm in the middle of a draft. I got to be honest. I'm up in one pick.
Hey, you're good. You're good. Hey, anybody who listens to this or watches this can understand you got a draft going on. You're good.
Yes, there you go. All right, so back to Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman last year, first-round pick coming out of Minnesota. He was a lot of people's wide receiver too. He kind of was banged up a lot last year, but he did flash when he did play. Baltimore lost their top receiver. He's now in Arizona. We'll talk about him later. And then not only did they lose him, but he is now finally healthy and he's got everything going his way. And I feel like just his opportunity to spread the field on the outside, and he's also such a great possession receiver. I think Rashad Bateman's going to have great things. And if you're talking about guys like saying Lamar Jackson's going to be a top quarterback, or he may be back to his, you've already mentioned that he may be back to his MVP days, then it's only going to benefit Bateman more. So I'm really looking forward to what he's going to do this year.
Love the pick. Big Bateman guy.
Yeah, he's a lot like my tight end, and that's Cole Kmet. And I know we'll go ahead and get your two as well, or do get your tight end in a second. But Kmet, I feel is very similar. I mean, they do not have a lot of people that are really going to compete for the ball. You've got Mooney on the outside, who's a great route runner, but Kmet comes in with all the prodigy coming from Notre Dame. He was a top recruit. He was a top draft pick, had 60 receptions last year. They kind of struggled finding him in the end zone, and I don't know if that was a combination of Fields being a rookie or it being Andy Dalton throwing the ball, but I feel like he's got such a great opportunity, and this is going to be a much better year. And he's someone, if you are unable to draft one of the top 5 guys, I'd be real comfortable having Cole Kmet on my team.
Yeah, I think we just blame everything on Matt Nagy at this point, as to why he didn't get more opportunities in the red zone. But I love Cole Kmet. I could have easily, I think we both agreed that was our guy at that position. And because you went Cole Kmet, I'm like, and this is where it got interesting for me, because I'm like, look, I don't want to pick somebody that, again, everybody else is picking. So I want to try to do something a little bit different and try to have some skin in the game, so to speak. So I went Evan Ingram, and I know there's a lot of people, especially Giant fans, are going to be like, oh my God, that's disgusting. I think I just threw up in my mouth. But Doug Peterson loves the tight end position. If you go back to 2018, 2019, the reason why I go back to 18 and 19 is because that was the first year, Dallas Goedert's rookie year, and you had Zach Ertz. Those guys were targeted over 200 times between the two of them. Now, Zach Ertz was 135 and 156 in those 2 years, respectively. And, of course, Goddard as the tight end 2, when they went 12 personnel, was that second tight end. Now he's the number 1 tight end in the Doug Peterson offense. Now, it's not as simple like vacated targets of saying, hey, just because a guy left 140 targets doesn't mean they're all going to go to this guy. Targets are earned. I get that. And if you look at Evan Ingram's last 3 or 4 years, the metrics are not in his favor. But you also had Jason Garrett, right? And I'm not going to mention the other guy that was there as the offensive coordinator, because that's how bad the offense was. You had Daniel Jones, who was struggling. So I think the talent, look, he's a 6'3", 4'4" speed guy, okay, coming out of college. The athleticism is absolutely there. It's understanding leverage and how to use your frame and how to use your speed and quickness to your advantage against safeties and linebackers within a scheme. And I think that's where Doug Peterson and offensively is going to elevate Evan Ingram's game. And the target competition is Christian Kirk. Played against him in high school at Saguaro. I've seen him up close. I loved his career at Texas A&M. I think he's done a great job at the NFL level. He was overpaid. He set the market. A lot of guys got paid because of Christian Kirk, but he's not an alpha. He's not a guy that you're going to target 50 times in the red zone. You've got Marvin Jones, who's getting a little long in the tooth. And then you got Zay Jones, who to me is more of a journeyman wide receiver. Nobody in that wide receiver group, which is why PFF grades him as a 28th receiving group in terms of position groups in the NFL. So I feel like there's an opportunity for Evan Ingram to be, with Trevor Lawrence going into year 2, to be that security blanket for him underneath coverage, and can also extend plays vertically on the seam and on corner routes from the tight end position. So I see them running a lot of 12 personnel, 21 personnel, 2 receiver sets, and I think that bodes well for Evan Ingram. And hey, a little bit of, I'm not going to say who, but I got a little bit of inside source. I got a buddy of mine that I coached at the high school level with. It's now on the Jaguars staff. And I texted him earlier today and I said, where are you at with Evan Ingram? This is an exact text message. He's healthy and fast as shit. He's a wide receiver coach at the NFL level, had a great career at the college level as well. So I trust his judgment. It's an inside source. That's all I needed to hear. I think he's going to be great in the play action game with those guys and how they're going to use Travis Etienne and James Robinson. So it's Evan Ingram for me. As much as I think people are going to hate the pick in season long, I think there's an opportunity for Evan Ingram to be a guy this year.
I like the pick in the sense that the big reason why is because of his athletic ability. You know, people always talk about how if you're a great athlete, you're going to keep getting chances, whether it be someone who gets in trouble or whether it be someone who struggles on the field. But when you have the ability that he does, it's no surprise that somebody gave him another shot.
Yeah.
His problem has always been able to perform during the games, his ability to make the big catch.
Catch the
And
rock.
I really, yeah, so we'll see. So you're right. It's certainly ballsy. And that kind of just leads into our next little thing. You know, everyone's always got hot takes or talk about big surprises that are going to happen in the season. So we kind of
I
came
love
up
this
with
part.
You like say that again?
I said I love this part. We're going to get into some good stuff here.
Well, I mean, you certainly went balls to the wall and weren't afraid to put your neck out there on the line. So why don't you start off with your first prediction? I guess we should. They're bold predictions. Calling them predictions.
Yeah, they're bold.
But it's not out of the realm of possibility of happening.
Yeah, and so I took it as we call it. If we're going to say it's a bold prediction, right? Don't tell me Justin Jefferson's going to be the wide receiver one. Don't tell me that Jonathan Taylor is going to be the RB one. Those are not bold. Those are obvious. Those make sense, right? Bold prediction to me are things that you can justify that have an opportunity to happen but are not likely. That's a bold prediction, right? So I took A.J. Dillon, again, talking about the Packers offense, what I think that's going to look like, taking a deep dive into that offense as part of Project 32. I think there's a real scenario where A.J. Dillon goes for 1,000 yards and 10-plus touchdowns in that offense, and Aaron Jones has 1,000 yards receiving. It's never been done in NFL history. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of you that are listening or watching or see this later on. I tried to do some research on it last night. I posted on Twitter. Nobody could come up with it. What I did find was the 1995 Arizona Cardinals. Love Larry Centers. If anybody's old enough to remember Larry Centers, the guy was an absolute monster. 101 receptions for 962 yards. And then Garrison Hurst out of the University of Georgia, whose career was cut short due to some knee injuries, but 284 carries for 1,072 yards. So you had your 1,000-yard rusher, and you were literally 38 yards away from a 1,000-yard receiver on the same team. I think that can happen. I think that can happen in Green Bay this year.
You know what was real neat about those two guys? Is that they did it the old way. They did it both on the field at the same time with Larry Sanders. When he would run the ball, it was your typical fullback trap or fullback dive.
Oh, yeah.
But damn, would he run those waggle routes and get out in the flat? I mean, he was – and then he ran choice routes in the middle of the field. He was a guy that – I mean, funny story, in my home league that I've been in since 1994, our rookie draft is also our we have to cut. We go from 22 to 12. So all the guys that got cut, they're in the rookie draft as well. Well, a lot of people, this guy was so high on him, he took him number 5 overall in the combined rookie. And this was after his 1,000-yard or 900-yard season. But yeah, I love the pick. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it. You talked a little bit about Green Bay's offensive differences from the past or what may happen. You talk about Devontae Adams leaving. Aaron Jones is going to be such a focal point in the passing offense. Well, and A.J. Dillon already was.
Yeah, and I think what people forget too is again taking a deep dive into the Green Bay offense this offseason is they are it was like 30th or 31st. I don't have it in front of me in terms of pace of play. They were like 31, 32 seconds, 30 seconds per play. So they took their time. Rodgers let the defense get set, looked at the personnel, and then read the box, read the apex players, and made his play call. Run or pass. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to allow him to do that over the course of a full 17-game season and understand how efficient that Green Bay Packers offense is. And now you're going to add what I think is going to be the best running games in the NFL behind one of the top 5 offensive lines. I just think, look, I think there's a real opportunity for both guys to stay healthy over a 17-game season. It can happen. When it happened with Arizona in 95, it was only a 16-game season. You give him another game, I guarantee you Larry Sanders has 38 yards receiving in that last game. So.
Yeah. All right, so here's my first one. And that's Marquise Brown. Reunited with Kyler Murray in Arizona. I think he's got a clear path to a top 12 wide receiver spot this year. I think he's already got chemistry. They played together at Oklahoma. You saw what he did for much of the season last year with Lamar. And I don't think many people would argue. I think Kyler's a better thrower than Lamar. And I think that the two of them together, and then you throw in that 6 weeks of no DeAndre Hopkins, I would not be surprised at all to see a 1,200-yard season with 12 to 13 touchdowns coming from Marquise Brown.
Yeah, I think in my projection, I've got him right at 1,200 yards and I think 9 touchdowns. So I'm right there with you. I'm not too far off. I love Marquise Brown in this offense. I like as much as you can talk about Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach. I think as an offensive coordinator, I think the guy's done a great job in Arizona, and you can see the numbers now. He fiddles during the second half of the season as teams make adjustments, and he struggled there, but he's always produced some pretty solid play. I mean, I'm excited to see what he does in this offense for sure.
Yeah, well, now it's your turn. Your next one, and this is one that I'm excited for. I hope this one comes true.
So Lamar Jackson, it's a contract year. He's given the deadline. He said, if we don't have a contract by Friday, I'm playing out the year. I'm going to become an unrestricted free agent. You can franchise tag me, and I can make money, a ton of money off you for the next 2 years with the multi-year franchise tag, and I will let it ride. I'm going to bet on myself. I love it. It worked out really well for Kirk Cousins. I hope it works out for Lamar Jackson. So I've got him to become the first quarterback in NFL history to run for 3,500 yards and run for 1,000 yards. If you go back to his MVP season back in 2019, he ran for 1,206 yards at a 6.9 yards per carry, which is insane. You knew what they were doing, you knew where it was coming from, and you couldn't stop it. And he threw for another 3,127 yards and 36 touchdowns. That's just an insane year. And now you're going to give him a contract year. The offense is going to go back to what made him successful during those seasons. They had to pass the ball a little bit more last year because J.K. Dobbins was out, Gus Edwards was out. There were some injuries. I think you're going to see them this year get back to the Greg Roman style offense, and you're going to see Lamar Jackson, and it's going to open up the play action. It's going to open up some other opportunities for uh, Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman in the passing game. But I think Lamar Jackson has an absolutely phenomenal year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him win the MVP again this year.
I'll tell you what, I would love it. I think he's a great kid. I think he's had to deal with so much coming out of Louisville as a, quote, running back and not a quarterback. I think he's proven to be – I just think he's earned it. I think he's earned the opportunity to just play freely and allow his talent to do what it does. Mine's another guy that's kind of a generational talent, or so far, or at least last year, so many people described him as such, but then he struggled. And you know, when I'm looking at this right now, we're talking about big surprises. I guess this shouldn't be a surprise because he was considered generational talent. But I think Trevor Lawrence really begins to show why so many people felt that way about him going into his rookie year. More importantly, about him his entire time that he was at Clemson and even before in high school. He's always been one of the top guys. Everyone's always had him up the very top. And I think we're going to see that with Urban Meyer now back on TV. Lawrence will get coached this year. You know, Doug Peterson and the offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, both of them worked together in the past, and both of them did a great job working with Carson Wentz, kind of taking him down a road that made him almost the MVP, led him to the Super Bowl until he got hurt. I just think that you're going to see, over 4,000 yards. You're going to see over 25 touchdowns. And more importantly, you're going to see him have a swagger back. You're going to see him having fun. And, I just think with that long hair, he just has a persona that he enjoys playing football. And he's having fun out there. And you just didn't see a lot of it that last year. And it's not a surprise when you hear what a lot of the stories coming out of that atmosphere last year with Urban Meyer in there.
No, and hey, I think it looks good. I mean, you get Travis Etienne back, he's healthy. You get James Robinson back, he's going to be healthy. I give him a couple weeks to kind of get his legs underneath him. But and then you look at it's not sexy at the wide receiver room, but it's manageable. I think Marvin Jones has proven. Zay Jones, I talked about earlier, is kind of a journeyman, but I think again you're going to go more 2 wide receiver sets. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that 12 and 21 personnel. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be set up for success with Doug Peterson. So I agree with it. I love the pick. I love it.
All right, let's do one more each, and I'll go first because this is you have all these real ballsy ones that I like.
I do. I mean, it's bold, right? You got to go bold, man. Big balls.
And I don't know how bold this one's going to be, but it's someone that I think that you got. And man, if you're sitting here and you just drafted your team and you've got a hole at running back, or you've got a spot that you may be able to just stash a running back, I think you need to go out and get Jordan Mason of San Francisco. He was an undrafted running back. I really do. And I know I actually
I love it.
Tried to spend a little bit of money on him in the Scott Fish Bowl, but we'll talk about that story in a few minutes. But he was good enough to knock Trey Sermon out of He's no longer a member of the team. He was cut. He was good enough to get rave reviews all throughout camp. He was good enough that a lot of people are already talking about him being higher than Ty Davis Price out of LSU. And I think he's going to be good enough to be the first guy up if Jeff Wilson goes down. And what I mean, and first guy up to be first guy up. First, you look at Elijah Mitchell. I love Elijah Mitchell. I would love that. Anytime you can get a back like you got when you drafted Elijah Mitchell and he performed like he did, man, that's like easy, free money. And I feel like Jordan Mason is the same. But what I was getting at with Elijah Mitchell is that he did miss time last year. He didn't play 6 games. So there's going to be a time this year where you can plug Jordan Mason in, and he's going to get you running back starter type numbers. And I'm going all in on the guy. And I tried to pick him up in the Scott Fishbowl. I'll go ahead and talk about that real quick. But in fact, I tweeted about it, and I shared how I thought I picked him up, but I actually picked up a guy named Ben Mason, who's not even in the NFL. So apparently I had
which is why I started laughing when you did your pick, because it took me back to what your story about. I knew you were going to get to it, but I'm like, God, I can't wait until he shares the story.
It's the second year in a row where I made that mistake. Last year, a guy in one of my leagues at the beginning of the year sent me an offer. I thought I was getting DJ Moore. He asked for a second round pick for D Moore. Well, I go, oh my God, it's DJ Moore.
David Moore?
Yeah, David Moore. So in the last 2 years, I traded for David Moore, and I picked up Ben Mason. And somehow we got our podcast.
Who'd you give up for Ben Mason this year? Who was it?
It was I just cut my kicker, who I wish I could play right now.
You cut your kicker. Okay, that's right.
If I didn't cut my kicker, my decision. Well, we'll get into that. Well, we already talked about it. The decision that I have at one of my spots, I'd probably just play the kicker because that is a known thing. Let's go with your last one.
So I've got 2 more, but I'll just hit on this one because I think it's a little more fun with the bold prediction thing. So I think Justin Jefferson becomes the first wide receiver to break 2,000 yards receiving in a single season. You've got 17 games now. And this is the one thing about if you're a purist, like if you're a baseball guy, you hate the DH if you're a purist, right? And now both American League and National League are doing it. If you're a football guy, you hated the 17 games because you're like, hey, the regular season rushing record, receiving record, passing record, all those things are going to get broke because everybody's going to get an extra game, especially in a pass-heavy, offenses that we see nowadays. But I think Justin Jefferson has a legitimate chance to be that guy. Kevin O'Connell comes over from LA Rams, where they use a lot of condensed formations, or if people don't understand what that is, or tight formations where you're using like a bunch set or a stack with 2 or 3 receivers close to the inline man of the scrimmage, which could be your tight end, your tackle, whatever. What it does is it creates a guy like Justin Jefferson, and why Cooper Kupp is so successful is it doesn't give you the opportunity to jam the wide receiver. They get a free release. They're able to get into space, and it allows the quarterback to make some easy decisions based on defensive back leverage. So with Justin Jefferson, just think Cooper Kupp with verticality. Cooper Kupp's a tactician. I love breaking down wide receivers. He's one of the best route runners in the league, right up there with Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, and those guys. But when you take a Justin Jefferson and you create free releases, you use him as a motion guy or out of stack or a bunch of formations, you open up a lot of things. And Jefferson was even quoted saying, I now understand why Cooper Kupp was always open. Right. So think, again, Cooper Kupp with more size, more speed, and verticality. That's what I think you're going to get with Justin Jefferson. I don't think he's as good with the underneath pivot routes, option routes as Cooper Kupp, but I think he's got an opportunity to just be absolutely phenomenal in Minnesota. The only thing that would keep this from happening is if Minnesota can control the clock, get ahead in games, and use the run game to run the clock. But I just think Justin Jefferson has an opportunity to break the single season receiving record. Again, I'm going to go bold. I hate boring bold predictions.
I like it.
Go big.
The guy's done nothing but succeed since he's been in the NFL. The guy now, just the way he talks, just him talking about having an understanding of the nuances more so now. He studies the game. That's a scary thought. So I love it. I know we said we're not going to do the last 2, but let's fire them real quick because this is one that, man, this isn't bold, but I've been trying to say this for 10 years. This is finally going to be Tom Brady's last year.
I'm glad you hit on this one. Okay.
Yes. Last year. We're done with it. What about you? What was your last one? Just tell us real quick before we get into our predictions as far as division winners, Super Bowl matchup, and so forth.
So real quick on Tom Brady, would not be surprised if he doesn't finish out the year. If things go wrong and there's more key injuries and the Tampa Bay gets off to a slow start, I'm just saying it. All of a sudden, I got a pulled hamstring, I got an MCL sprain or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised. You can say he's a competitor, I get it, but I just want to throw that out there. If it happens, hey, it is what it is. But Ramondre Stevenson, I think he's the back to have. He's the future of that franchise. I think he finishes 1,000 yards and 10+ touchdowns. I touched on him a little bit earlier. I love Ramondre Stevenson. I've got guys, Mike over at Daddy's Home on Twitter, huge Patriot fan. He's a guy that's in the know with what's going on in that organization, and he validated, kind of what my thought process was. I was asking him for some his thoughts on some picks in a draft, and he was very adamant that, hey, Ramondre Stevenson's the guy to own, in that backfield. So I think it's going to be a big year for him, and I'm excited to see how that unfolds this year.
That'd be fun. And I say that because we talked about it earlier when we talked about what we got out of Elijah Mitchell with where we took him. And Ramondre Stevenson is very similar, that it
Yeah.
did not cost much in draft picks or if you traded for him after he was drafted to get him. So
Yeah.
if he becomes what you're saying, man, that's like a lottery ticket coming through. All
No,
right, here we go.
I agree with you.
So,
Hey, sorry for the shoulder shrug. My wife got home, and when she gets home, I get
there you go.
mesmerized
Hey, I
as she
don't
walks
blame you.
by. So I got to give her some love, man.
Now we talked a little bit briefly about the wedding coming up this weekend. My wife's on the way to her airport right now to pick up one of the many family members that'll be coming in over the next few days.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. And we'll get into this. We don't need to get into too much on why we chose who we chose, but let's go through our division winners. And you start off with NFC West.
So I mean, this is such an obvious pick. I mean, the NFC West is loaded with talent. I think, pretty much every team in that division is doing things to make themselves better outside of Seattle. I think Seattle's trying to get, as close to the number one pick as they can to get their quarterback of the future. But when you look at the Cardinals, the Niners, and the Cardinals, Niners, Cardinals, and Rams. Sorry, I've got the Rams winning the NFC West. I still think that roster's absolutely loaded. Aaron Donald's come back for another year. Sean McVay can recall any play you want to talk about in the history he's ever coached. He's an absolute assassin when it comes to calling games. And then you add Matthew Stafford in year one to win a Super Bowl. You've added Allen Robinson now to replace Odell Beckham, who tore his ACL, who could be a late season signee with them. I still think that can happen. I just don't see anybody that can match up with the Rams. The Rams stay healthy in 2022. So it's the Rams for me in that division.
Okay, so it's so funny how you said, obviously it's this, obviously that, and I went in a different direction. So
here we go.
There we go.
You went Trey Lance Niners, didn't you?
I did, and I did for a couple of reasons. It's not
Stick
just
with your guy.
much, well, not just so much that. It's so hard to stay on top. And so now the Rams are coming off, a couple years in a row where they've been battling and getting real close, and then last year actually winning it. And to try and compete and stay at that level for a third time, you saw with Tampa Bay. Things just happen. And I think the things that are going to happen are San Francisco 49ers are going to be pretty good. You talk about rosters. You already talked about the weapons that Trey has, but then you look on the other side of the ball, you got linebackers like Fred Warner. You've got the defense up front led by Bosa. I mean, it's just a great roster. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if San Francisco wins it.
Yeah, I made it sound like it was an easy choice, and I think it's because, again, roster construction. I think Sean McVay is as much as I love Shanahan. I think Sean McVay is if I bring it down to it, I say, hey, let's go back to coaching, and it's kind of like basketball, right? I get into point guard play. Who's got the best point guard? It tends to be who wins the series. But I think in the NFC West, you can easily make a case, and the only reason why I take the Niners to finish second in that division is because as high as you and I are on Trey Lance, only 18 games at North Dakota State, right? Sat behind Jimmy Garoppolo last year, a little bit of game action, enough film study for us to say, hey, we like what we see, and I think it's a great system for him to be in. But I want to see it for a full season. I think when you look at this year, we can say, hey, the Niners are going to be a problem for a long time. And you can't say the same thing for the Rams because Donald's going to retire. Stafford doesn't have a whole lot of years left. And so you're going to find out Allen Robinson's getting a little bit older now. Cooper Kupp is getting a little bit older now at 27, 28, whatever he is. And so that Rams could be a completely different deal. I mean, Sean McVay is all in. He's making a run to win as many Super Bowls he can in the next 2-3 years. And Niners are the future of that division, I think. So I don't hate the pick at all.
All right, let's move on to the NFC East. And this is the weirdest thing ever. We got a guy wearing a Dallas Cowboy jersey.
God, this hurts, man.
Well,
No
but
pun
I'm
intended.
Go first.
No pun intended.
I'm going first. I actually selected the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm going to tell you, I did. Honest to God. And I did for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, I do think they're going to struggle out the gate. I do think that might be a possibility because they are a little bit banged up. They don't really have a true number 2 receiver yet. We'll see how that works out. But Gallup is coming back. Tolbert will have a few weeks to develop. We'll see what happens. And you made all the ballsy picks in the bold predictions, and I kind of went that route here. And yet it seems weird even saying it because they do have talent. Parsons on the defensive side. I know I see a lot of people thought he could have been the defensive player of the year last year. Well, he certainly can be this year. So I went with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I took a lot of heat last year on Twitter. I think it was like week 7 or 8 when I picked Micah Parsons. He was the clear choice, I think, at defensive rookie of the year at that point. And I said he should be in the conversation for defensive player of the year. And I took a lot of heat on that. The guy finished second in the voting. So, I like to say that, hey, I think the defense under Dan Quinn, with what they've done in the draft and what they've done, schematically, I think takes an even bigger step this year. But unfortunately, I just don't think the Cowboys, as much as I love Dak Prescott, and I think CeeDee Lamb's going to have a monster year just based on pure volume alone and what they can do in that offense. The roster in Philadelphia, Jordan Davis is an absolute monster. And I think that's the one thing that if you look at the Cowboys historically, they just don't spend a lot of money in a one technique defensive tackle type guy that can just be so disruptive in the middle of that defensive line. They get ran all over in the playoffs because they just don't spend money in that position. They don't spend money on the back end of the defense.
I don't know if they've done it since picking Russell Maryland in the first overall pick back in 91. And
correct.
He was a solid pro. But I think a lot of people thought he was going to be we're spending way much time. Why don't you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles? But what I was saying, I thought a lot of people thought he was going to be a Warren Sapp type.
Yeah, I just look. I love Gallimore and I love Osa, and I think there's some opportunity there in the rotation with the defensive tackle position. But there's just not a Jordan Davis on that defense, And then they took Nakobe Dean, who fell in the draft, who I wanted the Cowboys to get. I think he's going to be a monster. I know there were some health concerns, but I think he's going to be a monster on that defense. And who they brought in on the secondary, the guy that just got from the Saints, can't remember his name off the top of my head now, but I just love the roster construction. I think that's me as a purist and a pure football fan. I love the way certain teams build their roster, and the Eagles have figured that out. I just think it's the Eagles' division to lose for a long time, and it's unfortunate for the Cowboys that Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones just don't go after the high-priced free agents that are younger. They try to get these one-hit wonders at a discount rate after the free agency period, and it just doesn't seem to work out. So it's the Eagles for me.
NFC North.
I hate that, but man, it's the Eagles.
Well, most people feel that way. And
I got to be real.
It surprised me.
Yeah.
NFC North. You talk about them all night long. Tell us why you think Green Bay is going to win it this year.
I'll make it short and sweet. Green Bay Packers. I think the Vikings are set up for success. I talked about Justin Jefferson. If Dalvin Cook can stay healthy, I just think there's some holes defensively in the Vikings. And the Lions, I think, outperform. I think they can get to 8 to 9 wins, which I think is crazy to say, but it's the Packers. I mean, I just think the roster from top to bottom, the defense is going to be scary. The offensive line's top 5. You got a 2-time defending MVP quarterback. You got a tandem in the backfield that's unbelievable. So I think it's the Packers for sure.
I went another direction as well, and so for the second time, I went with Minnesota.
I love that people don't know that we don't know each other's answers. So I'm finding this out for the first time too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I went with Minnesota, and I did that for the Kevin O'Connell reasons, and I did that because their roster's pretty damn good themselves, and I just think that the message from Zimmerman kind of got old and stale, and I think
I love the Kevin O'Connell hire. Yeah,
I do too. So we're going to be here all night if we continue at this rate. So let's move on to the NFC South. Here's another surprise. I went with the New Orleans Saints. They've already shown success to beat Tampa Bay. They have a great roster themselves. I really love that. I mean, you talk about all the reports about getting Mike Thomas back, Chris Olave looking great. I think James Winston does kind of settle down a little bit and let the game get to him, come to him, I should say. And that's my pick. I'm going with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick, and I went back and forth on this. Again, Tom Brady missing 11 days. We can say he's the GOAT. He's 45 years old, going to be 46. How long can it last? I think Tampa Bay does make another run and wins the division this year. But it's going to be a complete retool and redeal. I mean, after this year, I think you're right. Tom Brady does retire. I do like what the Saints are building from a roster construction. I think their defense could be a top 5 defense, and I think they've got some skill players that can make things happen. So I don't hate the pick, man. I get why people can argue the Saints, but I went Tampa Bay.
AFC West. We're now in the AFC. AFC West, a lot of people feel is the best division in football. You've got Russell Wilson coming in now, so now they've got someone, and they've always had talent there. They just didn't have the quarterback. You got the Raiders getting Devontae Adams. It's going to be a fun division. But I can't, until something happens, I can't stop going with Kansas City. So that's my pick.
I don't hate the pick. And again, it's the craziest division because you can make a legitimate argument for any of these 4 teams to win the division. You really can. And so that's what makes it the toughest division. But I think it's Justin Herbert. I think what he's done early on in his career, I think with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, and they brought in Cook and what they can do from an offensive standpoint and what they've done. Defense, like Derwin James, Swiss Army knife defensively. You can line him up anywhere on the field and be a guy. So I take the Chargers, but it's tough because I could easily take the Chiefs. I think the Raiders offensively can be there. I just don't trust the defensive side of the ball for them, even though I know they've got Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. I worry about the back end of that defense. So for me, it's the Chargers. So, but it's hard. If you told me to put some money on it, it'd take a lot of thought to not pick the Chiefs. So I hear you.
Well, here we go. Let's move on to the AFC East. This might be our first time we've agreed, and I don't think Miami is quite ready yet. I don't think New England's quite ready yet. This is still the Buffalo Bills division.
I think the Buffalo Bills have got the best roster in the NFL right now, and it's ironic to say that. I think Philadelphia's just young. You got to see what Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean being rookies, what they bring to the table, what the A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts going to look like. But I think the Buffalo Bills just have the best roster front to back, both sides of the ball, special teams. It is what it is. I mean, you got one of the best kickers in the game. You got one of the best defenses in the game, and offensively, we know what they can do with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, and I think James Cook was a great piece that they've added. So I'm excited to see that offense this season. So it's Buffalo for me. I agree with you on Miami. I love the roster they're building there, but I think they're a year or two away. We'll see what happens.
AFC North. Another division. We went different directions. I can't.
Which I love, by the way.
I can't not pick Cincinnati. I feel like what has changed to make them not be the pick after last year? They added help where they needed it most up front on the offensive line, brought everybody back. Other than an appendix issue that's, I would assume, is completely fine now. They're good to go. They're reloaded. I like Zach Taylor. I'm going with Cincinnati.
It's funny because it's also a division where Mike Tomlin with the Steelers. I mean, I think you're crazy if you pick the Steelers to win the division, but I think it's a deep division. I think it's more competitive than people realize. I think if you had, as much as I hate the Deshaun Watson situation, if he was the guy in week 1 and wasn't facing a suspension, you make a huge argument for the Browns. They've got a loaded roster as well. It's tough to go against the Bengals. I'm just not a Zach Taylor guy. I feel like for some reason they've hit on the drafts, and it's all come together perfectly for him. I think when he got the head coaching position, I didn't see it. I was an offensive guy that wasn't going to be great as a head coach, but hey, to his credit, he certainly proved a lot of people wrong. But I went Ravens again. It's Lamar Jackson. It's a contract year. I think he's going to have a monster season. I think what they've done in the draft with the tight end position and where they're at up front, and I just feel like it's the Ravens' year to win the division. That doesn't mean the Ravens go further in the playoffs than the Bengals did. Let's remember the Bengals did what they did last year as a wild card at 9-7. So I just think the Ravens win the regular season. They're a great regular season team, but we got to see Lamar Jackson do it in the playoffs.
It's good. That's another fun division because as
It's
much
a
as
oh man,
Pittsburgh, it really is. I mean,
it
that division,
is.
because you can't bet against Mike Tomlin having those guys prepared and ready to go each week. Each
If that
week. So
offensive line in Pittsburgh was even mid-tier, I'd feel really good about Pittsburgh. But that offensive line is still so bad. I mean, their skill position guys, the backfield, what they could do, and obviously the quarterback position. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, what a fun division.
let's move on to the last division, and it's the same for us both, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. For me, I think Matt Ryan just adds stability to the whole program. I think you have someone in there now who's a professional. I think someone who just got kind of pretty offended that the Atlanta Falcons were even trying to think about going with Deshaun Watson. If that never happens, I don't know if he's no longer in Atlanta. But regardless, it's a you got Michael Pittman. Obviously, you have Jonathan Taylor. You've got an offensive line that may not be what it was, but it's still pretty damn good. And you've got a stud on the defensive line with Buckner. I think it's a great team. And, I don't think you got to add much to it because I know we're in complete agreement with those guys.
No, Shaq Leonard, whatever his new name
Yeah.
is. I know he's not going by Darius anymore, but yeah. I'm rooting for Matt Ryan. I mean, ever since he lost in the Super Bowl up 28-3 because they got conservative and got tight, and the sphincter just tightened up a little bit. It is what it is. But I think everybody can root for Matt Ryan this year. So I've got the Colts as well. I think it's a great pick.
Okay, so that takes us to our division championship games. You've got, NFC championship game. Philadelphia Eagles versus Los Angeles Rams. I obviously have something different. I got San Francisco versus Tampa Bay, which is weird because I have New Orleans. Which is weird. I have New Orleans winning the division because I feel like they always play them very well during the regular season. But if Tampa Bay makes it as a wild card, I can't see Tom not getting them at least to the championship game. So that's what I got. AFC, what do you have?
So AFC, I've got the Baltimore Ravens against the Buffalo Bills. Again, I think it's a year that the Ravens kind of figured out in the first, second round. I think they get a bye week in the first round, and so you get an opportunity to play two games to get in the AFC Championship game. So I've got the Ravens and the Bills in the championship game in the AFC, and I think you could easily make an argument for the Bengals. You can make an argument for the Chargers. There's certainly other teams you can make an argument for, and I could be completely wrong, but I just continue to go back to I think it's Lamar Jackson's year. I think it's a special year for the Ravens.
There you go. Well,
However, I do have them losing that game. Let's note that real quick.
Well, we both have Buffalo moving on, but I got Buffalo and Kansas City facing off, and hopefully it's as good as game as last year's was in the championship game. But this time Buffalo's going to find a way to win it. That takes us to the Super Bowl. We both have the same matchup, not exactly, but we both have an NFC West team facing the Buffalo Bills, and we both have the same thing.
You got the Niners going all the way, huh?
I do, all the way to the Super Bowl.
You are all in on Trey Lance. I got to be honest
with you. I'm all in on the
I kind of like it.
Yeah.
I've got the Rams and the Bills. Yeah.
The Bills finally do it. They went through those 4 years in the early '90s. Went through last year's tough thing, but we both think that they're finally finished.
And the Cowboys thank them because that was when the Cowboys were winning Super Bowls because we got to play the Bills in the Super Bowl a couple times and it worked out well for us. So this is the year the Bills do it.
Well, Coach, it was a blast. I'm sorry we're not going to have our first Sunday show this week, but we'll get to it right away. And great show, brother.
You got it, man. Had a blast with you, man. Good to be back on the mic, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Hey, everybody, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you guys again.